It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Zimbabwe. Part 2, the selections. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is a continuation of Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is part 2 of our coverage of Zimbabwe's players. The final roster is released and we are looking at the selections of Zimbabwe. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation from after the 2023 African Cup, so March of 2024 there, up until the October 2025 games. We considered a few other factors as well, and we also gave some biographical / career information on the main players to help you to get to know them better. In part 2 here, our focus is on the selections, especially the final selections. Before we move on, though, we want to let you know that in the springtime of 2026, probably April, we will start producing episodes for the 2026 World Cup, which of course takes place in the summer. Keep an eye out for that, or better yet, subscribe to the channel and it will notify you when the episodes come out. This mediacast is divided into 3 sections. In section 1, we have some team information, just like we did in part 1 there. Some preliminary information on the team before we go into section 2, which is our main part of the mediacast. We review the list that we compiled in part 1 and we'll tell you who made the preliminary and the final squad. We'll also try to predict starters. We took steps towards that in part 1 by providing a narrative of each position over the period. And we would like to repeat that narrative here because it's actually quite good, but we found that it made the mediacast too long. So we'll just kind of start after that. What we'll do is tell you who we were thinking of as starters after part 1 up until October 2025. Then we'll examine the lineups in games played after that to see if they give any further clues as to who will start. And finally, we will make our predictions or revised predictions on the starters. In section 3, we will start with our spotlight review. That's a quick run through the players who made the squad and our predicted starters. And we'll also review surprise selections, non-selections, and new players, as well as updating on injuries. Okay, let's jump right in to section 1. So just a couple of bits of information about the team there. Actually, in part 1, we looked at club affiliations of players, the games that Zimbabwe played over the recent period, and their preferred formations. Here, though, we're focusing on what the team published. Zimbabwe did publish a preliminary squad of up to 55 players, and some teams didn't publish that, but so far we've been pretty lucky in being able to get the 55-man preliminary rosters. Teams were allowed to bring 28 games to the final tournament, and Zimbabwe therefore had to cut 27 players from that initial 55-man preliminary squad. Before we move on to section 2 and see who those players were, let's take a look at the games played after October of 2025. And actually, when we did part 1, we already knew those games. They were in November of 2025. The first one was in Algeria on November 13th. We're not really interested in the scores, but I will tell you we're interested in the lineups there. That was a 3-1 loss to Algeria. And then they played in Qatar. They played Qatar in Qatar on November 17th and actually won that game 2-1. So that was good. So now we are ready to move on to section 2 and our main business of the candidates and selections. So let's begin with manager Mario Marinica, and a little bit to talk about here. He came into the position after the completion um, of the 2026 World Cup qualifying games. So I believe he came in early November, although some sources have it as late October. It doesn't matter though. We have just the 2 games that he has managed them through. Then the 2 November friendlies. That's all we have to go on here. Basically, Marinica did select the expected players for the most part. There's a couple of controversial non-selections there. He did introduce quite a few new names to the squad. But in terms of predicting starters, it becomes quite difficult as his preferences may be different than those of the previous manager. And as I say, we have only 2 games to look at as far as his selections go. Nevertheless, he is guiding them through the tournament, and so we will consider him a selection for the final squad effectively. Let's move on to goalkeepers. And we have 2 definite candidates here, Washington Arubi and Martin Mapisa. And the new manager did select those 2 for the final squad. And we had a likely candidate in Elvis Chipazese. He too also selected for the final squad. So as you can see, not a lot of changes in the selections. This is going to continue throughout the team, where, for the most part, the expected candidates were chosen. We also had a possible candidate in Marley Tavaziva, and he was selected just for the preliminary squad there. So too was our seemingly off the squad player, Donovan Bernard, selected for the preliminary but not the final squad. And we have a new candidate also just making the preliminary squad. It is Nelson Chadja, named to the preliminary squad. Okay, that is what we have. Let's see what we were thinking at the end of part 1, and again, that's under a different manager. But we had Washington Arubi as the likely starter and Elvis Chipazese as a possible starter. In the recent friendlies, Washington Arubi did start the first game, but Elvis Chipazese started the second. Actually, at the end of October, there it was the same thing. Each of them shared a game. And we were a bit confused, maybe, or became a bit doubtful when Elvis Chipazese started the last game in October there. It's the same thing here, that there doesn't seem to be a lot between them. We think that the new manager is comparing them in these 2 games. We still think Arubi has a slight edge over Chipazese, so we're not going to change our prediction there, although we wouldn't really be surprised if Elvis Chipazese did get the start. Okay, so we're using a star system here to designate who we think of as starters. So we're going to give 2 stars to Washington Arubi as a likely starter and 1 star to Elvis Chipazese as a possible starter. But we don't have confidence enough to give 3 stars, a definite starter, to a player here. Okay, that's it for goalkeepers. Let's move down to defenders. And we begin with central defenders here, where we had 3 definite candidates, Gerald Takwara, Munashi Garananga, and Teenage Hadabi. All 3 of those were selected for the final squad. So Gerald Takwara in a green highlight there. Munashi Karangana also selected, and Teenage Hadabi there in a green highlight. We have a likely candidate, Brendan Galloway. He was an injury concern. We'll cover that in section 3 in more detail, but suffice to say here, he was selected for the squad. So you can guess that he overcame his injury concern there. Two possible candidates. The first one, Peter Muduwa, not selected even for the final, even for the preliminary squad there. But the other one, Ishianesu Mauchi, making the final cut there. So selected for the final squad, giving us 5 central defenders. But we have one more to add because we have a new candidate here. Well, not a new player to the team. He was part of the 2019 and 2021 African Cups. It is Alec Mudimu. And yeah, we are going to introduce him. Actually, we said we would introduce players called up that we hadn't introduced in part 1. Before we do, we will mention that another new candidate, Carlos Mahurume, or Carlos Mavhurume, I'm sorry, was selected, but only for the preliminary squad. Let's take a look at Alec Mudimu. He's been with Zimbabwe since 2018. He has 26 caps for the national team and is 30 years old. And he is playing for Flint Town in Wales, a pretty small club there. It's actually his third time with them. Since 2025, but he has played in lots of other places, in Tunisia, England, Georgia, a very long resume. Actually, as I said, he was part of the 2019 African Cup squad. He actually started games 1 and 2 there and then lost his starting position. But in the 2021 African Cup, he was just on the bench, and not even on the bench actually for game 3, but saw no action in that tournament. Yeah, so a bit of a surprise selection. The last time he had appeared for Zimbabwe was in that 2021 African Cup. And if you recall part 1, or if what we covered in part 1, a lot of the players in the 2021 African Cup were not called up after that cup. A bit of an overhaul after that cup, and we are going to see some of those players actually being recalled by the new manager here. So the first of those, Alex Madumi, making it 6 central defenders that they're bringing to the cup. And let's go to our predictions. So after part 1, we didn't actually talk about our predictions in the part 1 of the mediacast, but we actually did kind of make note of what we thought. What we thought was that Gerald Takwara was a likely starter, and then the other 3, Garananga, Teenage Haddaby, and Brendan Colloway, were all possible starters there. Let's look at the November friendlies to see if they influence our thinking. And we see a 3-man central defence in the first November friendly with Takwara, Garananga, and Haddaby. That would be pretty much what we expect there. In the second game, it was Garananga and Haddaby. So a little different than what we expect, because we thought Gerald Takwara was the most likely. So we're going to slightly modify our prediction, and we're going to put all 3 of those players as likely starters in a rotation, we think, or possibly, as we saw in the first game, all together in a 3-man central defence. So we're going to put a likely tag beside all 3 of them: Gerald Takwara, Munash Garananga, and Teenage Haddaby there. All right, that's central defenders. We move on to left backs, and here we had a definite candidate in Jordan Zamora. And here is our first surprise, because he was not selected for the final squad, only made the preliminary squad. That is due to injury. He picked up a thigh injury from December 15th and is not expected back until January 5th. So that leaves him out of the tournament. And a big loss, I might say. Not only did he play as left back, but in a couple of other positions as well. The likely candidate, Divine Lunga, was selected for the final squad. And then we have a new candidate, but only making the preliminary squad. That is Ronald Fumbidzai. Ronald Fumbidzai. Okay, so that is a strange situation. There doesn't seem to be any backup there. Let's see. Well, what we thought at the end of part one was Jordan Samura. We would have put him as a definite candidate. In fact, we thought he would be a definite candidate to start somewhere on the field, a likely starter in this position, and a possible starter in other positions. But anyway, that's all for naught now because he is not part of the squad. We had Divine Lunga as a possible starter. So I'm curious to see what happened in the November games. Let's take a look. It is actually central defender Brendan Galloway starting the first and Divine Lunga the second. So that is interesting, and we now think probably Brendan Galloway is being groomed as a backup for this position. Our revised opinion then is Divine Lunga as the likely starter and central defender Brendan Galloway as a possible starter there. And we'll just bring Brendan Galloway down here to denote that. Okay, now we move on to right backs. And we have two candidates at the definite level here. The first one is God Knows Murwira, and he was selected for the final squad, as was the other definite candidate, Emmanuel Jalai, or Jalai, I think. Both of those selected for the final squad. We had no candidates in part one beyond that, but now we have three new candidates making the preliminary squad. The first one, Tendai Darikwa, just making the preliminary squad. Then we have Webster Tanaka Tafa, and finally McClive Fury. All three of those making the squad. The preliminary squad only. All right, let's look at the situation for right back. So who we thought were the likely starters. After part one, we thought actually Emmanuel Jalai was a likely starter, and God Knows Murwira as a possible starter. When we look at the games in November, strangely, we see central midfielder Sean Fusier starting the first November friendly, and God Knows Murwira starting the second. July, though, started as a right attacking midfielder in the second game there, so he did get on the field. We're not really sure, honestly, what to make of that, but our revised prediction is putting God Knows Murwira and Emmanuel Jalai both as possible starters. We're not really sure. And again, this is all under a new manager, so adding a bit of doubt to the situation. But there we go. We have them as possible candidates. Okay, on we go upfield to defensive midfielders. Defensive and central midfielders we'll do together, but we'll go by the coding here. So we have no definite or likely candidates coded as defensive midfielders, but we do have two at the possible level. The first one, Prosper Padera, and he was selected for the final squad, as was the other possible candidate, Jonah Fabish, selected for the final squad. Two candidates at the possible but unlikely level, and neither of them actually even making the preliminary squad there. The first one is Tivongi Roshesha, and the second one, Mason Mushore. Both of those not even making the preliminary squad. We have two new candidates, again, just at the preliminary squad level here. So we'll just mention their names. Thabani Kamusoko. He is one of the players who was part of the squad for the 2021 African Cup and did not get called up since then. So at least called up to the preliminary squad here. And then we have Talenda Tavengwa, the other new candidate on the 55-man preliminary roster, not making the final cut. Okay, let's look at central midfielders before we get into predictions. And we have another big surprise here. Marshall Munetsi, a definite candidate, not selected for the final squad. And there's a big story behind this one, a big drama behind it. He was ruled out via injury. The official reason is that he sustained a calf injury while playing for Wolverhampton against Nottingham Forest in early December. This was quite controversial as his club had informed the Zimbabwe Football Association that he was recovering well and could participate. But the Football Federation says the documentation from the club, Wolverhampton, allowing him to play, was not provided. So he's not he's not listed as injured. In fact, there seems to be no injury connected with this. It just seems to be an administrative issue. Munetsi himself said he was hurt after being left out. He was the captain of the team. So that's just a terrible story there for a player willing to come to the Cup, and they lose his services. He had started 14 of their 18 games over the period, was a very important player, and his services were lost. So I'm really shocked by that. Our second definite candidate was Marvelous Nakamba. He had been an injury concern, and this is a bit of a weird story too. In part one, we reported that he had been out with a calf injury. He had been plagued with injury during not only the period we looked at, but over the last few years. In the African Cup in 2019, he was injured for the last two games, and then he had an injury, knee injury, that left him out of the 2021 African Cup, and he was out in the first half of 2023 getting a knee injury. Recently, it's a recurring calf injury that occurred 3 separate times in the first half of 2025, then in September 2025, and again in November. And he did play for his club and country in between those occurrences. Weirdly, when I read the report, there's no report of any knee injury since March 2025. Although he has not played for his club since October 2025. So I'm just weirded out by all of this. Like, it looks like the information on the source changed. Nevertheless, he is selected for the final squad. So that's the long and short of it. Marvelous Nakamba, and especially in the absence of Munetsi, they will need his services. Okay, on we go to possible candidates. We had 2 of them, and both of them were selected for the final squad. The first one, Andy Rimanhota, was selected, and the other one we saw starting as a right back a bit oddly under the new manager. That is Sean Fusier. Actually, I shouldn't say a bit oddly, because I do have at least one source that does code him as a right back. But for most of the period, during the period, he got his start as a central midfielder here. Anyway, he is selected for the squad, and let's look at our possible but unlikely candidate, Richard Hachiro. He just made the preliminary squad. Okay, we have a couple of new candidates here. Again, only preliminary squad level though. Blessing Sarupinda, Blessing Sarupinda, and Never Tigere. Both of those just making the preliminary squad. Never Tigere another one of those players who was part of the African Cup in 2021 and not called up after that. So at least called up here. Okay, well, that leaves us with just 5 candidates then. Let's see what we were thinking after part 1. We were thinking, well, Marshall Munetsi would be a definite starter. That's what we thought. We thought Marvelous Nakamba would be a likely starter if he was fit. And finally, possible starter Andy Rinompota. Okay, again, we look at the November games. It's hard to get over the shock of Munetti's absence and the ridiculousness that surrounded it. What we have in the November games is Jonah Fabish, our possible candidate, our possible defensive midfielder, starting both games. And it was alongside Bill Antonio in the first game. Bill Antonio is coded as a right attacking midfielder, and more to what we expected, he starts alongside Marvelous Nakamba in the second game. All right, so we have to remove Marshall Munetsi from our list here. Otherwise, we still have Marvelous Nakamba as a likely starter if he's fit. And now we will have to put Jonah Fabish as a possible starter since he started both games under the new manager there. All right, that's the central midfield, and we move upfield. Well, we're moving towards the attacking end of the field, but we have to pause at right midfielders. We didn't have any candidates listed as left or right midfielders in part 1, but we have 2 players to kind of add to our list here. In fact, one of them made the squad there. And this is Ismail Wadi, coded as a right midfielder. Yet another of the players who was in the African Cup in 2021. He was a starter, in fact, but not selected after that tournament, but brought back here. So he's been with Zimbabwe since 2021 with 6 caps and 1 goal. He's 33 years old now and recently moved to Caps United, his second stint with them, Caps United in Zimbabwe since 2025. In between his 2 stints, he was with JD Stars in South Africa for 4 years. So he was... I'm going to say a consideration. He seemed to be around the time of the 2019 African Cup because I have a note on him. He was an unused substitute in April 2018. He didn't end up getting his first cap, though, until 2021. But by the time of the African Cup there, he was a starter in it. So, well, started games 1 and 2, and game 3, he was injured for that match. As I say, that was his last appearance, but Ismail Wadi coming back for this African Cup as he was selected for the final squad. Do I have that? Oh, I don't have his name on the list there. There he is. The other one is just a preliminary squad player. His name is Genius Hute. Genius Hute just making the preliminary squad there. And now we can move on to the attacking end of the midfield. And let's look on the left side of the left attacking midfielders. Here too, we have another little drama. We had Walter Musona as a definite candidate, and he too not selected for the final squad. And it's not dissimilar to the story for Munetsi here. The medical team cited a hamstring injury following a friendly match against Algeria. That would have been the first match in November there. Musona took to social media to dispute this, claiming he was 1,000% fit. And this has led to speculation about some type of miscommunication or breakdown in trust between the players and the new coaching staff. The long and short of it here is that yet another definite candidate not selected for the final squad, just on the preliminary squad there. Walter Musona, probably not as big a loss as Munetsi, but big enough there. So he is not selected for the squad. We had another. Sorry, I got him in the wrong spot there. We have another definite candidate here, and that is Tawanda Maswanhise. Tawanda Maswanhise selected for the final squad there. And a possible candidate, Daniel Msendami, also selected for the final squad. A new candidate here, actually three of them, and none of them making the final squad. So these are all preliminary squad selections. The first one, Tafadzwa Rusiki, just on the preliminary squad. Next, we have Junior Jarrison Selamani, and finally, Obriel Chorinda. All three of those just on the preliminary squad. Okay, let's see what our thinking was at the end of part one. Well, we're going to find all of these positions are very difficult to define starters because we had a lot of players coming in and out. We just had a few names that were possible starters here, none at the likely or definite level. And we had attacking midfielder Tawanda Chirewa as a possibility. Left back Jordan Zamora had appeared up here a couple of times. Of course, Walter Musona, he's actually coded as a forward. And our right attacking midfielder, Daniel Msendami, who we moved over to this left side here. So, well, we already know that two of those players weren't selected for the squad, Jordan Zamora and Walter Musona. Let's look and see what happened in the friendlies there. Well, actually, we heard as part of the drama that Walter Musona was a starter in that first game, played in the first game. That was the game that they kind of argued about whether he was injured in. So Walter Musona started that game, but was not selected for the final squad. It was Daniel Msendami starting the second game. So the position seems very, very unclear. Where does that leave us? Well, we're going to say a starter is undefinable on this side. I guess if we had to put out a name, we would go with Msendami, but we don't have a lot of confidence that that'll be the case. So we're just going to leave this blank. We're going to say that we can't predict a starter for this position. Okay, let's move over to the right side, and we begin with no definite candidate for this position, but we have two likely candidates. The first one, Knowledge Musona, and he was selected for the final squad. And the second one, Bill Antonio, who we mentioned earlier, and he also was selected for the final squad. And we have no candidates beyond that except two new players which we found on the preliminary squad, and in fact one of them selected for the final squad. The first one is interesting. It's Tadiwanashi Chakuchichi, and he is just 16 years old and selected for the final squad. So I hope we get a glimpse of him in the cup. That's Tawanashi Chakuchichi there, and the second one just making the preliminary squad, Zolani Ndlovu. Zolani Ndlovu not making the final cut there. So we have three candidates over here. Let's see what we thought at the end of part one. Yes, this position also, honestly, a real mess in terms of the period in 2024 and 2025 that we analysed. It was really just kind of players coming in and out, and we couldn't narrow it even to a possible candidate. Let's see if the recent games help us there. It was Tawanda Maswanhisi. I think we introduced him on the left side there. So. Um, and his coding is as a left attacking midfielder. Tawanda Maswanhisi starting the first game there, and then in the second game we have central. Yes, this is confusing because one of my sources has it as right back Emmanuel Jale moving up, as we said back there, but another of my sources says it is Bill Antonio, and they have Jale starting in the central midfield there. Either way, Bill Antonio did play in the position a couple of times, so if we were put to the sword on this and had to name a candidate, we would say Bill Antonio. But again, we don't have enough confidence in that prediction to actually put it down. So on this side as well, we have to say that the starter is undefinable over here. It could be anyone. Okay, we move on to the central attacking position. And here we had a definite candidate in Terence Zuvkamania. Terence Zuvkamania, though, is injured. Or was it an injury? No, I don't think it's an injury concern. It's just a tactical decision. The manager saying that he was favouring younger options there. Zuvkamania is 31 years old. Anyway, not selected for the final squad, just on the preliminary squad there. And the same thing is true of the other candidate, the likely candidate here, Kama Billiot. Actually, he was not even selected for the preliminary squad. And again, citing the age thing, because Kama Billiot is 35 years old. But there was also another report suggesting Billiot asked to be excluded, saying that there were personal family matters and that he wasn't in the right psychological space in order to give his best to the team. So whatever the reason was, Kama Billiot not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Then we have one player at the possible but unlikely level, and that is Muthoko Zizi Msebe, not making the preliminary squad either. We do have one candidate to add, and that is Kudakwashi Mahachi, yet another of the players in the 2021 squad who was not selected afterwards, and brought back at least to the preliminary squad here, but not making the final cut. Okay, we have nothing really to check here. We'll see. We thought if they did use the position, which was unlikely, that it would be Kama Billiot in the position, and that was just at the possible level. But our real thinking was that we doubted they would use this position, or if they did, it would be a central midfielder. We don't want to get back into what we discussed in part one. The recent games, the position was not used in the November friendly, so our final prediction is that they won't use this central attacking midfield position. Okay, we move on to forwards here. Wow, this is a bit of a mess, isn't it? Okay, moving on to forwards, and we have we'll look at the candidates first. A definite candidate in Tawanda Chirewa, and he was selected for the final squad. Two likely candidates, Prince Dube, selected for the final squad, but the other likely candidate, Tino Tende Kadawir, not selected for the final squad. That one is due to injury. though, and we'll update that in section 3. Two possible candidates, but neither of them made even the preliminary squad. The first one is Timon Machope, and the second one, Thandol Winkosi Ngwenya. Neither of those making even the preliminary squad, and nor did our possible but unlikely candidate Douglas Mapfumo. But we do have several new players to add. In fact, 3 of them selected for the final squad here. The first one, Macaulay Bond, is selected. Washington Navaya, also selected for the final squad, and finally Junior Zindogo. So let's introduce these players that made it. Macaulay Bond, actually been with Zimbabwe all the way back to 2014, but only 2 caps and 1 goal for them. He's 30 years old now, and he plays for a very small club in England, Malden and Tiptree, since 2025, but he was with more recognisable clubs prior to that, Southend and Gillingham in England among them, and earlier in his career, Charlton Athletic and Queen's Park Rangers, so more familiar teams there. He was born in England and came back to the team in 2024 after a more than 9-year absence there, and started the first 2 of their remaining 18 games in March of 2024, and then he was off the team again, not selected for the last 16 matches. But here he is named to the final squad. So actually, because he participated in March of 2024, he should have been in our initial list there, but we're introducing him as a new candidate here. Next new candidate, Washington Navaya, just new to the team in the November friendlies there, called in for that and actually started one of them and was subbed in for the other. So Washington Navaya has 2 caps now since 2025. He's 27 years old though, so not that young. And he plays for Tel1 in Zimbabwe, a club in Zimbabwe. So his whole career has been in Zimbabwe. And there we have it, Washington Navaya. And then we have the third one, Junior Zindoga. Junior Zindoga plays for TX Galaxy in South Africa since 2025 and was with Marumo or Marumo Gallants prior to that. And he also is new to the squad, of course. He never appeared even in November games prior to being named to the preliminary squad, Junior Zindoga. But there we have him selected for the final squad. So 3 new candidates there. We have several more just making the preliminary squad. First one, David Moyo. And Admiral Muskwe. Both of these players part of that group that were on the 2021 African Cup and not called up after that cup until appearing on the preliminary squad here. Beyond that, we have 3 more, Ishmael Nyanhi, Wilfred Madzungu, and Wellington Tadarera. All of those just on the preliminary squad. So 8 new candidates there, 3 of them making it 5 forwards in all. And let's take a look and see what we were thinking at the end of part 1. We had, again, very unclear up here. We couldn't make any firm predictions whatsoever. So we just had possible starters, Tawanda Chirewa and Prince Dube. That was as much as we could say. When we looked at the recent games, newcomer Washington Navaya started the first game and Prince Dube the second one. So again, we're going to really kind of be hesitant here. We really don't know. We're just going to put Prince Dube on our list as a possible starter there, but it could be anyone. including out-of-position players or including the newcomer there, Washington Navaya, who saw action in both of those friendlies. That brings us to the end of our look at the players in Section 2. So we move on to Section 3, and we want to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast. We begin with our spotlight review. That's a race through the squad, looking and reviewing at what we covered in Section 2, but really it kind of summarizes Part 1 and Part 2 of the video, pretty much everything so far. This is the list we've come upwards, and we're going to race through it. So first we have manager Mario Marinica, and he just came in right at the end here after the October 2026 World Cup qualifying matches. So the only matches he's been in charge of have been the 2 November matches there. For goalkeepers, we have 2 definite candidates, Washington Arubi and Martin Mapisa, and a likely candidate in Elvis Chipazese. All 3 of those made the squad, Washington Arubi, Martin Mapisa, and Elvis Chipazese. We also have a possible candidate in Marley Tavaziva, but he only made the preliminary squad. Any candidates below that, YouTube watchers can see the name on their screen, but we're not going to mention them unless they made the final squad there. In terms of starters, we're using a star system here. So 3 if we think it's a definite starter, 2 for likely, 1 for possible. We give 2 stars or likely starter Washington Arubi, and then 1 star for a possible level for Elvis Chipazese. Okay, let's move on to central defenders. We have 3 definite candidates, all of them making the final cut here. So we have Gerald Takwara, Munashi Garananga, and Teenage Hadabi. As I said, all 3 selected. Also, our likely candidate, Brendan Galloway, was selected for the final squad. We had 2 possible candidates here. Ishianescu Mauchi made the final cut. The other one, Peter Muduha, not even making the preliminary squad there. And we will mention one of our new candidates who made the final squad. That is Alex Mudimu. So that makes it 6 central defenders that they'll bring to the Cup. For starters, we give an even chance to our 3 definite candidates, Takwara, Garananga, and Hadabi. We think it'll be a rotation among the 3 of them, or possibly even a 3-man central defense there. Let's go to left back, and we come to our first big surprise, Jordan Zamora, our definite candidate, not selected for the final squad. That's due to injury, and that's a big loss for them. And then we have likely candidate Divine Lunga selected for the final squad. And actually, Brendan Galloway is not really on our list here. We just have him on the list because we think he's a possible starter, a kind of a backup for this position, because we only have Divine Lunga over here. So we consider him the likely starter and Galloway the backup or even a possible starter there. On to right backs, we just had 2 candidates here, both of them at the definite level, and both were selected. It is God Knows Murwira and Emmanuel Jalai. And for starters, we give them each a possible as starters in this position. It could be either one of them. Okay, on to the midfield, the central and defensive midfield. So we'll go by the players' coding and begin with defensive midfielders here. None at the definite or likely level, and possible candidates Prosper Padira and Jonah Fabish, and both of those were selected for the final squad. And we move to central midfielders, and here we have another big surprise. Definite candidate Marshall Munetzi, not selected for the final squad. And Marvelous Nakamba was selected. So a big dramatic story behind Marshall Munetsi, which we won't get into in this review. We also had two candidates at the possible level. That's Andy Reno Mhota and Sean Foussier. Both of those making the final squad. And it looks like in part two, I forgot to make note of who we had as starters. So I'm just kind of looking that up here as our potential starters. We have Marvelous Nakamba as a likely starter if he's fit. And possible starter is defensive midfielder Jonah Fabish, which we wouldn't have had at the end of part one, but he started both of the November friendlies, so we put him as a possible starter over here. But we are actually fairly uncertain, and as we move upfield into other positions here, we become more uncertain still. So moving on to left attackers. No, actually, we have one player as a right midfielder who was selected for the squad, Ismail Wadi. And I'll take this opportunity to say that he is one of several players who was part of the 2021 African Cup. That squad was completely overhauled. A lot of those players never being called up after, but now some of them being called up by the new manager, most of them to the preliminary squad, but Ismail Wadi is actually one of the ones actually making the final squad. But I would say there's 5 or 6 players in that kind of category being called back from the cold there. Okay, now we move on to attacking midfield. We had left attackers here, and Walter Musona, another dramatic story here, a definite candidate that was not selected. And again, you'd have to check section 2 to get the full story there. But our other definite candidate, Tawanda Maswantisi, was selected for the final squad. We also had a candidate at the possible level, Daniel Msendami, and he also was selected for the final squad. In terms of predictions here, we have no predictions, really no idea who it is going to be starting over here. Nobody really played the position enough to lay claim to it. The same is going to be true on the right side, but let's talk about the candidates first. We have none at the definite level, but 2 at the likely level, Knowledge Musona and Bill Antonio. And we also have a player added here making the final squad. It's Tadiwonashe Chakuchichi. He's just a very young 16-year-old player, so that's kind of exciting. But again, in terms of predicting starters here, we can't. We don't see anyone starting enough. Perhaps Bill Antonio, if we had to name someone as a possible starter there, but no stars to distribute to the names here for us. Central attackers, we had Terence Juvkamanja. He was a definite candidate, but also not selected for the final squad there. We gave the reasons in section 2. We also had likely candidate Kama Biliad, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. And that's all we have over here. So we go to forwards, and we had a definite candidate in Tawanda Chirawa, and he was selected for the final squad. And we have likely candidate Prince Dube also selected. However, our other likely candidate, Tino Tenda Kadawir or Tino Kadawir, not selected for the final squad. That is due to injury. And then we had 2 possible candidates, Timon Machope and Thendo Wenkosi Ngwenya. Neither of those selected even for the preliminary squad. However, we do have 3 players added to the list here, and that is Macaulay Bond, Washington Navaya, and Junior Zindoga. All of those part of the squad added right at the end here. Okay, that is the end of our Spotlight review. And we have a couple of other orders of business to talk about here. The first one is surprises. So we had a lot of surprises here. We begin with notable non-selections, and holy cow, what a list we have here. Some of the top players. Uh, so some of these are due to injury, and we'll deal with those below. That's true of our first candidate, Jordan Zamora, a left back, a definite candidate, out due to injury. Captain Marshall Munetsi, a real shocker here. We told the pretty long story in section 2, but he was also a definite candidate. He's a central midfielder, and just a really kind of silly story, almost seems like an administrative error there. The next one, Walter Musona, kind of an administrative error also. He's coded as a forward, but we had moved him to left attacking midfielder and considered him a definite candidate. So there's 3 definite candidates already. The next one is attacking midfielder Terence Zufkamania. That is due to injury, so we will talk about that one below. Next one, Kama Biliat. Several reasons were given for him. He's an attacking midfielder. In his case, not even selected for the preliminary squad. All of the others so far were named to the preliminary squad, as was our last candidate here, Tino Tendakadawir, a forward who we considered a likely candidate as well. And that one is due to injury. So 3 of them due to injuries, 3 of them due to other reasons. Really shocking. Surprise inclusions. Actually, we didn't have any players below the possible level that were selected for the squad. So no surprises there. We did have new players, though. Let's take a look at the new players. Well, we would consider the manager, Mario Marinica, a new player. He just came in at the beginning of November there. So the only 2 games he's managed were the November friendlies. So that brings a lot of instability to the squad, which we're seeing in various other ways as well. Central midfielder Alec Mudimi. Let me try that one more time. Alec Mudimu. A central defender, new to the squad. Well, not new to the squad, but new to our list. Any player who hadn't played before 2024, we didn't have on our list. Ismail Wadi is a right midfielder and named to the preliminaries, or named to the final squad here. And then we have 3 forwards. Macaulay Bond, Washington Navaya, and Junior Zindoga. And actually, I was neglect. I missed one candidate here. That's the youngster Tadiwanashi Chakuchichi, a right attacking midfielder. Also added to the squad. So 7 new players on the squad. Also a bit of a sign of instability, the number of new players that were added to the squad. And let's go to injuries here. So we'll start with our previous injury list, what we had at the end of part 1. And we had 3 unknown entities there. Brendan Galloway, Marvelous Nakamba, and Tino Tendakadawir. There. Let's update on those, but we had 1 added to our injury list, Jordan Zamora. We'll talk about him shortly here. I described the situation for Marvelous Nakamba in the main part of the mediacast. It was a bit of a long story, so I won't repeat it here. It's just that the situation on his injury was different when I looked at it in part 1 than it was for part 2. For Marvelous Nakamba, though, he is recovered, and we can put him in the recover from injury because he was selected for the final squad. Brendan Galloway, I don't think I mentioned it in part 2, but it was kind of the same thing, that he seemed to have a recurrence of a leg injury, and he returned to play in August but missed 2 games in September because of that recurring injury. And then it recurred a further time from November 11th. And he, at the end of part 1, had an unknown return date. Then, when I look at the same website for part 2, it's as if it never happened, or at least the latter part of the injury had never happened. He kind of has a clear record for all of this season, so no mention of it in September or November anymore. I'm weirded out by the whole thing. Maybe I just made up this in my head. I don't know. But anyway, Brandon Callaway is not an injury concern, and he is named to the final squad. So whatever that is, not really an issue that's preventing him from the cup. So we'll also move him to recovered from the injury as well. The other one, Tino Kadewere, not so lucky. He was out with a meniscus tear. That's a kind of a knee problem since late October. At the end of part 1, it had unknown return date, and that prognosis remained the same when we checked it in preparing for this update. And Kadewere was not selected for the final squad, so we're going to say he is dropped due to injury. Between part 1 and part 2, we had Jordan Zamora getting injured in the middle of December, and I became curious actually as I was delivering this, when we were talking about Jordan Zamora, what happened to him for the November games, because his injury is from mid-December, and I'm surprised to find that he wasn't called up for the November games, which is a bit odd as well. But anyway, he is out with a thigh injury from December 15th, not expected to recover until early January. So Jordan Zamora also dropped due to injury. So wow, they're losing a lot of big names from the squad here. That's the situation for Zimbabwe, and that brings us actually to the end of our media cast here. So thank you for joining us for our look at Zimbabwe here, and I hope you join us for our next team as well. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this media cast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.